I'm here to the Geneva Press Club for this press conference. Welcome to our speakers today. We are going to talk about human rights in Western Sahara, and we will have some testimonies of victims there, of journalists too. You can follow us here for sure in the room. Thank you for coming. Just take a seat for those who are coming right now. And you can follow us also on Zoom, where we already have many people there. And you finally can follow us on our live stream on www.pressclub.ch. You can also follow us on our Facebook page or on our live streaming on YouTube. So very welcome to all of you, and without any other comments, I give directly the floor to Gianfranco Fattorini. Gianfranco Fattorini, you are the co-coordinator of the support group of Geneva for the protection and the promotion of human rights in Western Sahara. And the floor is yours. And I'll let you moderate this, the coming panel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ruici. And first of all, I should thank the Swiss Press Club for hosting this press conference here in Geneva. And on behalf of the Geneva Support Group for the Protection and Promotion of Human Rights in Western Sahara, I welcome you all here in the room and on the internet for this press conference launching the campaign for the protection of Sahraoui human rights defenders, journalists, and political prisoners. Before starting with the testimony, I will make just a short introduction just to understand why we launched this campaign and what is actually the situation in the territory and how we came at this point. So just very briefly, in 1963, the UN General Assembly included Western Sahara in the list of the non-self-governing territories, to which Resolution 1514, including the Declaration on the Granting of Independence to Colonial Peoples and Countries, applied. In 1966, the administering power, Spain, declared to be ready to organize the referendum of self-determination, and the General Assembly gave to Spain the mandate to organize this referendum. But in 1976, Spain left the territory without organizing the referendum. Meanwhile, in 1975, the International Court of Justice ruled that the materials and information presented to it do not establish any territorial sovereignty between the territory of Western Sahara and the Kingdom of Morocco. In November of the same year, in 1975, the Kingdom of Morocco invaded Western Sahara. Since Spain withdrew in February 1976 from Western Sahara became, and still is today, the only non-self-governing territory that has not an internationally recognized administering power and which is under illegal military occupation. Now, the Declaration of Principles of International Law concerning friendly relations and cooperation among states, adopted by the General Assembly in October 1970, provides that, I quote, the territory of a colony or other non-self-governing territory has, under the Charter, a status separate and distinct from the territory of the state administering it, not mentioning occupying. And such separate and distinct status under the Charter shall exist until the people of the country, the colony, or non-self-governing territory have exercised their right of self-determination in accordance with the Charter, and particularly its purposes and principles. Now, the long-standing Kingdoms of Morocco occupation of Western Sahara has led to a number of gross violations of human rights, as well as serious and continuous violations of the Fourth Geneva Convention of 1949. In particular, it is to be highlighted the violation of Article 31, 32, 33, 49, 53, and 76 of the Convention. Now, the situation today. A ceasefire was agreed by the Kingdom of Morocco and the Polisario Front in the late 80s in the framework of a settlement plan presented by the Secretary General and the President of the time of the Union of African, Organization of the African Union, which led this settlement plan to the creation of the UN Security Council in 1991 of the UN mission for the referendum in Western Sahara called MINURSO, a referendum that was supposed to take place within few months. But the Kingdom of Morocco throughout the years has spared no efforts to impede the organization of such referendum. Now, 29 years after the creation of MINURSO, last year, a group of Sahrawi civilians, mainly women, gathered on the road illegally opened by the Kingdom of Morocco outside the southern town of Gergerat, protesting against the failure of the UN to organize the referendum of self-determination and independence and the continuing illegal plundering of the Sahrawi natural resources exported through that road by the Kingdom of Morocco. The intervention of the Moroccan army in the demilitarized zone in the face of this peaceful demonstration by civilians led to the breakdown of the ceasefire in force since 1991. The resumption of the armed conflict in November last year was accompanied by an increased repression of human rights defenders, journalists, and political prisoners. Therefore, in the face of an extremely critical situation of the Sahrawi population, that's why we launched today this appeal to the international community for the protection of Sahrawi human rights, journalists, and political prisoners. And with this, I now will give the floor for Zoom intervention to Mr. El Majoub Maliha of the Collective of Sahrawi Human Rights Defenders. Majoub, do you have the floor?
Thank you, Mr. Gianfranco. I hope you can hear me.
Perfectly.
Thank you very much. Distinguished organizers, thank you for giving us the chance to be with you today. Distinguished guests, thank you for attending this important press conference. On behalf of CODESA, I would like to share with you
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
You can go on. So everybody can see how the Moroccan authorities behave when we try to speak about what is going on in Western Sahara. Please, Majoub, you have the floor.
Indeed, on behalf of CODESA, I would like to share with you some figures from our recent periodic reports. Since the 13th of November 2020, when Morocco breached the ceasefire agreement resulting into the resumption of hostilities in Western Sahara, we have reported at least 4 cases of killing. 2 young Sahrawis were killed nearby the separation wall or the berm. We have the case of Mohammed Salim Ayyad Ali Fahim, whose death still a question mark. And we have the miscarriage of al-Mu'mineen Khaya, who lost her baby due brutal attacks carried out by the Moroccan occupying forces in occupied Boujdour. We have 2 cases of rapes, case of Luara and Sultana Khaya. We have 93 cases of kidnapping and torture, including the president of CODESA, Babu Zaid Mohammed Saeed, and other members, Salik Baber and Khalid Boufreo, for instance. More than 200 cases of arbitrary detention. Majority of them are released after being tortured without trials. It is quite difficult to have accurate numbers, as many of those cases are afraid of being targeted again when reporting their cases to us. We have reported 90 cases of house arrest and imposed sieges, including Sultana Khaya and her family, who are under house arrest since 19 November 2020 and still suffering brutality on a daily basis, beside many other human rights defenders such as Mina Bali and Abdul Khaliq al-Markhi, who is the secretary of CODESA. The political prisoners, we have at this moment 48 Sahrawi political prisoners, including human rights defenders and journalists, and the majority of them are detained outside the occupied territories of Western Sahara in a clear violation of international humanitarian law. They are all mistreated by both the prison administrations and other Moroccan prisoners, with limited access to family visits, with no access to use the facilities phone, and in many cases punished in isolation cells. During the recent social protests in Glimim, around 80 Sahrawis were arrested, tortured, and mistreated. 19 of them remains under arrest awaiting trials, while 12 others to be tried under conditional release. We have noted also 5 cases of landmines explosions resulting casualties. The media blockade imposed by the Moroccan occupying forces has intensified since the Moroccan ceasefire breach, of the breach of the ceasefire and the resumption of war on November 13th, 2020. Sahrawi journalists are systematically targeted with reporting on human rights situation and the illegal plunder of Sahrawi natural resources. Example of Yahdi Khalih al-Nasabi, who is the Gargarat Media Network, who was arrested last July, sentenced to 1 year in prison. We should highlight the fact that we are operating in very difficult circumstances, which makes data collection an impossible mission. However, those figures reflects the human rights situation in the occupied territories of Western Sahara and its dramatic deterioration. We should also underline the alarming misuse of the COVID pandemic circumstances and the resumption of war to impose restrictions on Sahrawi human rights defenders and independent journalists, and to violate every single human rights and the freedoms of the Sahrawis, which makes the need for an international mechanism for the protection of Sahrawi civilians, Sahrawi human rights defenders, and journalists more emergent than ever before. All the above mentioned crimes against humanity committed by the Moroccan occupying forces in Western Sahara are consequences of the UN failure and the irresponsibility of the international community. The Trump illegal proclamation, the absence of international human rights protection mechanisms, absence of the International Committee of the Red Cross, the EU illegal trade and fisheries agreements are all encouraging Morocco to keep committing crimes against the Sahrawi people with full impunity, and to maintain its military occupation and to prolong the suffer of the Sahrawi people. The Sahrawi people have always opted for peaceful struggle to defend its fundamental right to self-determination and independence, and we are very afraid that we will not be able to maintain that choice. The international community and the UN are pushing the Sahrawi people towards radical options, which need an urgent intervention to end the occupation in Western Sahara, allow the people of Western Sahara to exercise their fundamental right to self-determination. Thank you.
I thank you, Majoub. And now I will give the floor to Faiha Khaya, who is member of the Khaya family, in particular Sultana and Luara Khaya, that are prominent human rights defenders, 2 women that are now for months detained at home and aggressed, even sexually, by the Moroccan forces, and who have thrown the Moroccan forces throw regularly in the house. They broke the windows, and they regularly throw in the house substances that make the life very difficult. They had also health problem because of these substances. So now I will give the floor to Faiha, if you are with us. Yes.
My name is Saida Khaya. I'm from Bourges. It was born in the city in Western Sahara, which is still occupied by Morocco. I belong to a family who has always been resisting the military occupation from early age. 15 months by Sultana and Luara declared to start peaceful interactions with the new world in Western Sahara.
Faida, sorry.
Peaceful protest against the Morocco occupation. Other land as well as resisting the Sahara flag in the front of the family's house and repeating the national revolutionary slogan against the occupation. For this reason, a word of
No entender, mare.
has been protested in the house since of the Morocco police members and against agents attacking our house and and nights. For the beginning of the siege, the military started much torture, violence, rape, sexual harassment, and all types of intimidation and humiliation. For no reason, just because of losing the Sahrawi public flag and peaceful protest. My aunt Luara was bitten over her mouth and consequently some of her teeth were broken. Moreover, her head was still injured due to torture. Sultana stated also
Faida, sorry.
her body was injured.
Faida, sorry.
Only has eyes because he
She has not
the other one by Morocco police number 2007 when she was protesting
Faida, do you hear me? Faida?
and
Faida?
should have
No.
she was eaten of inconsistency over her
Il a
head
coupé.
seeking the
Faida, I'm sorry. I hope you are hearing me. You should take the micro in front of your mouth because we don't understand really what you are saying. So you can restart your intervention, but please put the micro in front of your mouth.
Their sexual harassments and rapes attempted have affected my grandmother psychologically. She was over her had been taken to hospital. I was beaten and harassed many times during the siege. They had taken systems over my body. The Morocco forces entered the house three times at almost 5 a.m. and diminished all our person to take everything, your clothes, money, stuff, and even if as well as torturing my grandmother and aunt. The morning was the most dangerous and worst situations they had my aunt and when not sick and eating my grandmother when she was trying give help to her daughter. They took systems into the house cut of electricity filled to kill Sultana, but we in one of the raids infected the family with the coronavirus, and now we are suffering without any medical treatment and surrounding the house. No one can visit them. The only way which I can help my family is just trying and happening through the social media so that all the world can know what we are facing. Our voice is the second most pushed international human rights and association and organization as well as any person who lives in justice.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm very sorry, Faida, but unfortunately the connection was not good, and we couldn't really understand what you were saying. But by the way, we have a short video of your cousin, Sultana, a well-known human rights defender, and she sent us a testimony from her, and she speaks about her current situation. If we can have the movie.
سلطانة إبراهيم خير رئيسة الرابطة الصحراوية للدفاع عن حقوق الصحراوية لمناهضة الاحتلال المغربي من يوم 19 نوفمبر 2020. أنا تحت إقامة جبرية أنا وعائلتي، والحصار اللي مفروض علينا وجميع وسائل الانتهاكات الجسيمة لحقوق الإنسان اللي مارس علينا الاحتلال المغربي، واللي كان يخلطونا بالمواد السامة اللي يعني ما هي العشرات من المرات، واللي كان تدخل 10 ماي اللي يعني انتهبوا منزل عائلتي وخلطونا بالمواد السامة وعذبونا وضربونا. يوم 12 تم الليلة اقتحام علينا فجرا، وأنا وأختي وأخويا اللي كنا ضحايا، اغتصاب وعنف وسحل وجميع المسائل. و22 تدخلوا علينا أنا وأخواتي داخل منزل عائلتنا في شهر 8 اللي كان يعني نقلونا فيروس كورونا مباشرة أنا وأختي بوطة، واللي يعذبنا واللي مازلنا إلى الآن مصابة نتحدث معاكم مصابة بفيروس كورونا بدون علاج بدون طب بدون أي شيء، ممنوع يدخل علينا أي شيء، ونحن لا لشيء لأن نطالب بحقنا في تقرير مصيرنا واستقلالنا.
The direct testimony of Sultana, and our colleagues Tone S will speak about it because she is in charge of the case. But now I will give the floor to Nasia, member of Equipe Media, which is a group of independent journalists in Western Sahara. Nasia, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Hello, everyone.
Please, you have the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for organizing this conference and inviting us to raise up the voice of Sahrawi people. My name is Nazha Khalidi. I'm a Sahrawi journalist and human rights defender, member with the media group activists, Equipe Media, based in the occupied territory of Western Sahara in the capital, El Ayoun. So we are living, as you know, in a territory that is cut off from the rest of the world. And when I see how Moroccans interrupt to block this conference and to prevent us from express ourselves in this meeting, I'm not surprised, because this can show you the small pictures of how Morocco deal with everyone in Western Sahara or abroad that support the rights or the free rights of Sahrawi people in self-determination. And you can see like we are not allowed to speak up in online, in social media through Zoom. So how it can be in the reality, especially in the occupied territory that is controlled by the Moroccan occupying forces. So Morocco is applying a systematic policy that hide or that make them hiding the truth of the will of Sahrawi people, that denying the existence of the illegal Moroccan occupation on their land, Western Sahara. Morocco is trying to use a policy of imposing a totally media blockade on the territory by turning back all the foreign press that are trying to visit the territory and make investigation, meeting people, innocent people in here, and take their stories outside and expose how Morocco treats the people in Western Sahara. Morocco is imposing a military blockade that prevents everyone to express themselves in the public streets in the occupied territory of Western Sahara. And we have also a simple example of what's happening with our colleague Sultana Khaya, that is documenting her situation, her daily situation, on what she's subjected to in her daily life while she was defending herself. Sultana now, she's under house arrest for more than
So, a new experience with the relationship with the Kingdom of Morocco. I hope that we will have Nasia back with us to continue her presentation. And I try to give now the floor to Hassana Habba, who is president of the League for the Protection of Sahrawi Political Prisoners held in the Moroccan jails. Hassana, if you are with us.
Mr. Gianfranco?
Yes, please. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you for everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to talk about the situation of the Sahrawi political prisoner in Moroccan prison. First of all, should be noted that the phenomenon of the political detention in Western Sahara has been appeared since the Moroccan invasion of Western Sahara in 1975 until today, because it's varied between arbitrary detention, kidnapping, enforced disappearance in a secret center. As for the arbitrary detention, it's a strategy by the Moroccan occupation authorities to target the human rights activists and defenders in the occupied territory in order to put an end to the peaceful resistance in the territory. For example, there are 41 political prisoners in the Moroccan prison, and every time we have an exchange, when we arrive, the number to 36, it go back to 41, 45. So where they are arrested, they kidnap it and fabricate charges against them. As in the case for Ghali Bouhalla, Mohamed Nafi Boutessoufra, and Yahdih Sabi and the others. And the last one, a few days ago, Jalal Bouchab and Hamza Bouhriga and Harouche. Their rights as a political prisoner are also violated during the arrest, besides being subjected to torture and signing fabricate police reports under threat. And they face a trial does not respect the condition. I'm talking about the international recognized fair trial. After the period of arrest and the trial, the suffering of the Sahrawi political prisoners continue in the prison, are directly targeted by violating them and depriving them of all their legitimate right as a political prisoner, and by punishing them inside a solitary prison, something called kashu, as a revenge of their possession of their activity. Like the case of Sidi Bha, Sidi Abdullah Bha, Yahya Muhammad Hafid Izza, Muhammad Bourial, Muhammad al-Bashir Boutengiza, Ahmed al-Sba'i, Salik al-Asiri, and others has been in solitary prison, the kashu. We have another suffering, it's the prevention of the family visit and the confiscation of the personal needs of the Sahrawi civilian prisoner, as well as the violation of the rights to study and academy inside the prison. We have Al-Bashir Khadda, Abdul Mula Al-Hafidhi, Abdullah Al-Khfawni, and others. From time to time, they have trouble and problems to continue their study inside the prison. Even the right to treatment. The prison administration practiced a policy always from time to time of counseling examination appointment for the Sahrawi political prisoner. We have the case of Ahmed Sba'i, Ibrahim Ismaili, and Sid Ahmed Lemjayed. The Sahrawi political prisoners are prohibited from visiting despite even the exceptional period organized by the Moroccan prison administration in this year in the coronavirus. The COVID-19 or the corona pandemic now in the world has a great impact on the situation of the Sahrawi political prisoner, as they have been prevented from visiting family for more than a year since the first day of the COVID-19 in this world, resulting in a shortage of split for the prisoner and the shortage of clothes and everything due to the prevention of visiting and prevent and confiscate their property sent by their family. Even the family, when they send something, they cannot get it. It's confiscated by the prison administration, and the racist policy against the Sahrawi political prisoner, as they were prevented from visiting during the exceptional period. I'm talking about this exceptional period. It made it in March and the end of May for a month, the end of May and June. The Moroccan administration prison make this exceptional period for visiting, but it have for all the Moroccan prisoner, but the Sahrawi prisoner doesn't have a right to visit. The mother of Mohammed Lamin Hadi, she tried to visit in the same period. They prevent her, and the family of Sid Ahmed Lemjayed, they try to visit him in June, but they doesn't have a right. But the problem that they suffer, they travel along more than 800 kilometers, sometimes more than 1,000 kilometers to visit. In the end, they doesn't have a rights. So it also confirmed that the political prisoners suffering and their suffering are double, as they reach the family of the political prisoner, prevent him from visiting or visiting in humiliating condition. And the distance also, it's a big suffer, because there is some prisons far of more than 1,200 kilometers from the occupied territory of Western Sahara. And the family, after they arrived, they are prevented. Perhaps the big example, as I said, the family of Mohammed Lamin Hadi was prevented by the local prison administration. It's barred from visiting her son, who has reached more than 69 days in hunger strike. So it should be noted that the situation of the political prisoner, Sahrawi political prisoner, has become dangerous, especially after the 13 November 2020, and the direct targeting of which they were subject by the Moroccan prison administration, the humiliating search to which Sahrawi political subjecting in the 13 November, directly targeting all the political prisoners inside the prison. So it's the day when the Moroccan regime occupation break the ceasefire and targeting attacked the Sahrawi civilian in Gargarat. So it's necessary to mention the dire health condition of the Sahrawi political prisoner. The prison administration, in procrastination, many medical appointments have been postponed for most of the prisoners, imposing uniform, and sometimes they call them as a condition, imposing the uniform of the prisoner. I'm talking about the common rights as a condition to go to the hospital. So that's why when we try to see, to understand how the Sahara political prisoners are in a big suffer, we have to know the numbers of the hunger strike that made taken by the Sahrawi political prisoner. How many, because that's the only way for them to defend and to demand their right. For reference, the number of the hunger strikes by the Sahara political prisoner. It's the biggest evidence of their suffering, because it's the only way to climb their legitimate right. For example, last year, the League for Protection of the Sahara political prisoner in Moroccan prison documented a number of violations of the prisoner rights. For example, 23 trials against Sahraoui activists, 15 violation of the right to treatment and cancellation of medical appointment. It's continue preventing the family and preventing especially Claude, Naama Asfari's wife, from visiting her husband. 29 cases of cruel form of ill treatment, and 26 hunger strike. And when we say 26 hunger strike, I'm talking about all type of hunger strike, from 24 to 48 to upon hunger strike, like the last one of Muhammad Amin Hadi, 69 days, and who was under fast feed, so by the Moroccan administration prison. In fact, it takes a long time to talk about the Sahraoui political prison situation, given the suffering and their family endured due to their struggle for independence of Western Sahara. So they still continue suffering in the prison. They still believe their principle. They are targeting inside the prison because of their principle, because of their position. They still are the same way as a militant outside the prison and inside the prison. So finally, we would like to refer that the International Committee of Red Cross assume the full responsibility for the situation and the safety of Sahraoui civilian prisoners, considering that the Western Sahara territory is certainly witnessing a war between the Polisario Front, the legitimate representative of Sahraoui people, and the Moroccan occupation force. So we still continue peacefully to demand the right of political prisoners. We will not stop until we get our list of political prisoners for no political prisoner, 0 prisoner, but we know that will be ended just when we get our independence. Free all the Sahara political prisoners, and thank you very, very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
I thank you, Asana, for your testimony, and I would like just to complete his testimony with 2 information. He spoke about Naama Asfari. Naama Asfari is a double citizen. He has a French passport, and his wife is a French citizen, and she is forbidden for years now to enter Morocco and to visit her husband. And secondly, the International Committee of Red Cross, in fact, opened a delegation in Morocco in 2015, and since then they are trying to visit these political prisoners, but the Moroccan authorities does not allow the ICRC delegation to visit them. And with this, I will give the floor to Mrs. Tone S, a Norwegian jurist who has taken several cases in front of the UN Human Rights Council special procedures. Tone, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Gianfranco, and thank you very much to all of the panelists that went before me with some maybe symbolic problems. We have heard the testimonies of those actually living in the occupied territories of Western Sahara, telling the tale of how they are persecuted by the Moroccan authorities in response to their human rights activism, but also their support for the right to self-determination. For far too long, we, the international community, have remained far too silent while the Kingdom of Morocco illegally detains, tortures, and marginalizes the Sahrawis in Western Sahara. And although we try to bring attention to this brutality, the stakeholders that matter the most, the states, comes short to holding the Kingdom of Morocco accountable. Following the end of the ceasefire between the Kingdom of Morocco and Front Polisario, those of us who are working with the occupied Western Sahara have witnessed massive repression of the Sahrawi civilian population. This past May alone, Moroccan agents have detained without a legal basis, tortured or assaulted 13 human rights defenders in Western Sahara. The government has also weaponized rape and sexual assault against many of the female human rights defenders, including Sultana and Louara Kaya. Moroccan agents have raided and rampaged through their homes, shut off their electricity and water access, hurled noxious substances into houses, and prevented activists from leaving their homes and accessing their families. Meanwhile, detained human rights defenders remains in prison and the arbitrary violence continues. The violence is carried out with one overarching aim: to silence the call for the right to self-determination in Western Sahara. The UN special procedures have documented systematic and widespread abuses. For instance, the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention has, in opinions rendered, established a systematic pattern of the imprisonment of Sahraoui activists and human rights defenders when they exercise their right to freedom of expression. The working group has issued decisions that cover over 22 individual cases, documenting the practice of the Kingdom of Morocco in imprisoning Sahraoui activists in response to their opinions expressed, constituting discrimination on the basis of them being Sahrawis and their support for the right to self-determination. During recent days and after the end of the ceasefire, 3 joint communications have also been sent to the Kingdom of Morocco by the UN Special Rapporteurs, documenting violations in 24 individual cases supported by numerous communications sent in the past. On 10th June 2021, and while denouncing violations in a total of 14 cases, 6 different mandate holders denounced the ongoing house arrest of Sultana and Louara Kaya and the sexual assault perpetrated against them by Moroccan agents in May 2021. The special rapporteurs urged the Kingdom of Morocco to remedy the situation and to ensure the most basic of rights for the victims, whilst clearly denouncing the systematic and calculated nature of the violations, stating that the violations comprise a concentrated effort to intimidate and to deter human rights defenders in Western Sahara from exercising their rights to freedom of expression and association, and to retaliate against human rights defenders for their peaceful and legitimate activities, including information sharing and dialogue with the United Nations and membership in human rights organizations. In its responses to the communication, the Kingdom of Morocco wholly denied these extensively documented and serious allegations and has even attempted to criminalize the activities of the Sahraoui human rights defenders as against national security. The Kingdom of Morocco also attacked the independent special rapporteurs and complained that the UN special procedures was based on political motives. The line of arguments of Morocco is nothing new, who also opposed the latest decision rendered by the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention on the case of Walid el-Battal on the grounds of politically biased language and terminology, whilst failing to take any actions whatsoever to implement the decision. As noted by the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights Defenders, Mary Laylor, in her latest report on the long-term detention of human rights defenders, whilst also referring to the imprisonment of Sahraoui human rights defenders, state responses to communications sent on the long-term detention of human rights defenders are a mix of denial, dismissal, and refusal to engage. The denial is thus not surprising, although it continues to be cause of worry. In the case of the Kingdom of Morocco, the state has also subjected victims of this abuse to acts of reprisals. The latest documented reprisals were published in the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention most recent report of last Monday, highlighting that Walid el-Battal and the 4 imprisoned students, Aziz al-Wahidi, Al-Kantawi al-Bur, Mohamed Dada, and Abdelmoula el-Afidi, had been subjected to acts of reprisals after the UN rendered opinions in their cases. The Kingdom of Morocco has not yet implemented the decisions by the working group and the recommendations of the UN special procedures. Nonetheless, public condemnations, press releases, and communications shine light on those who feel forgotten by the world, Sahraoui human rights defenders in Western Sahara. When facing a state who denies and punishes human rights defenders, we cannot remain silent. Failing to speak out against injustice is a license to the state to continue its abuses whilst fostering the already institutionalized culture of impunity in Western Sahara. We must remind the victims of the abuse that they are not alone. That is why this campaign is so important, because at the heart of it all, what we are doing is to stand alongside those who need it the most, those living under hell on earth in occupied Western Sahara. Thank you, Gianfranco.
Thank you very much, Tone. And now I will try to give the chance to Nasia from Equipe Media to finish her testimony. Nasia, if you are with us.
Yes.
Please.
Can you hear me now?
You can continue and conclude.
Thank you very much. So I was talking about the situation of Sultana Khaya because we are really worried about what's happening to her. So Sultana Khaya is under house arrest for over now 11 months, and nobody can be close to her the place, to the area where she is processed and where she lives, and the only one who can documents what's happening to her is herself. So she's subjected to torture, as my colleagues mentioned before. She was subjected to rape twice by the Moroccan police when they attack her house. Like very early in the morning in the past months, and of course her health situation is really getting worse and worse after she's subjected to the COVID, and also the chemical materials that's used by the Moroccan authorities and that's thrown on her house by the Moroccan police also make her suffer a lot, and her health gets really worse. So we really need international support for Sultana Khaya that stop Morocco from doing what they do against her now, because she refused to transfer her own house, the house that she owned, to a prison. Her house, she doesn't have electricity, no water, and nobody can visit her from her, the members of her family. Nobody can be into the house, and nobody can meet her and like check her situation. So in general, of course, there is a media blockade, as I mentioned, beside of the harshly punishments that is also used by the Moroccan authorities against the local citizens and local journalists in the occupied territory. Between of these punishments, of course, the imprisonment and the sentence of the prisoners to lengthy terms or prison terms. And here we talk about so many examples and so many activists who are now inside and behind bars in the Moroccan jail, sentenced to 20 years, 30 years to life in the prison. I would like also to highlight the situation also become badly for the Sahrawis in the occupied territory, especially after the outbreak of the war, and also after the outbreak of the pandemic that become a way and or like very useful for the Moroccan state to control more and more the movement of Sahrawi people and to control also the movement of the activists. And I would like here to shade the lights on a new procedure that Morocco is used, which is every activist or everyone like Moroccan people and also Sahrawis who have visas and want to be abroad, to travel abroad, needs to have allowance documents from the Moroccan administrations to travel. And actually, I would like to share with you what I faced the past couple of days when I was invited by the Reporters Without Borders section Sweden. And I received invitation to attend some meetings and activities in Sweden between 23rd of September till 26th. And I had to apply for this allowance document. And when I went to the administration that's responsible to offer this document, I had to wait 7 days to get it, and I didn't get it. While in the meantime, the people who applies and submit their application to get this authorization have to wait only 24 hours or 48 hours, like maximum 48 hours, and they can easily get it. For me, I wasn't able to have it, and now I'm not allowed to travel because I don't have that document. So it shows how Morocco is simply, using the pandemic to control the people and to control also the travel of the activists who are trying to be outside, share with the people abroad what's going on in here. And we will really need like more work to highlight this measure that limits our work as activists inside, while Morocco, and also outside, while Morocco is having like a big and free space to spread fake informations and news about the real reality of what's happening in occupied Western Sahara. The Sahrawi people is not allowed to protest and express themselves inside the occupied territory of Western Sahara, and the Sahrawi activists are not allowed now to travel and to also to represent the people of Western Sahara. But it's all policies that Morocco tries to stop the work we do, but we believe in what we do, and of course we will keep going despite of all what we are facing. And you are also working for our rights, and we're really thankful and grateful for all what you are doing there in your country from your sides. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Nasia. And I should praise the courage of these people who made the testimonies, because they live in the occupied Western Sahara. And of course, we will in the following days and weeks have a look at what will happen to them, of course. And just maybe to give some more information, she said she was invited by Reporters Without Borders in Sweden, and the Spanish section of Reporters Without Borders made a report 3 years ago calling Western Sahara as a black hole. In fact, since last visit of the Office of the High Commissioner in 2015 for a technical mission to Western Sahara, which was supposed to take place every 6 months, the Kingdom of Morocco has closed the door of Western Sahara. For the last 6 years, there are hundreds of people, journalists, jurists, parliamentarians, human rights defenders, who tried to visit Western Sahara, and all of them, coming from dozens of different countries, were rejected, expelled from Morocco or Western Sahara by the Moroccan authorities. So since 2015, there's been no independent witnessing in Western Sahara. And with this, we will conclude the press conference, the presentation at the press conference, with a declaration adopted by the 300 organizations, member of the Geneva Support Group for the Protection and Promotion of Human Rights in Western Sahara. I will read the declaration. The 300 members organization of the Geneva Support Group for the Protection and Promotion of Human Rights in Western Sahara denounced the United Nations inaction in Western Sahara and called for effective actions to protect Sahrawi human rights defenders, journalists, and political prisoners. 30 years after the deployment of the UN mission for the referendum in Western Sahara, MINURSO, the Sahrawi people are still waiting to be able to freely exercise their right to self-determination and independence in accordance with Resolution 1514, by which the UN General Assembly adopted the Declaration on the Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries and Peoples. The prolonged occupation and illegal annexation of most of the non-self-governing territory of Western Sahara by the Kingdom of Morocco is the cause of serious, systematic violations of the human rights of the Sahrawi people and of the norms of international humanitarian law, often documented by UN human rights mechanisms. With the end of the ceasefire and the resumption of the armed conflict on 13 November 2020, human rights defenders, journalists, and political prisoners have been subjected to heightened levels of harassment, repeated threats, ill treatment, torture, sexual assault, shaming, arbitrary arrest, and detentions. Some of them are arbitrarily confined to their homes, like the Skaya family, permanently surrounded by the occupation forces that cut off electricity and internet access. Political prisoners are held in unsanitary and inhuman conditions, hundreds of kilometers from their families, and are denied visits and access to medical treatment. Furthermore, some have reported being deliberately exposed to COVID-19 by Morocco authorities in retaliations for their activism. The Geneva Support Group for the Protection and Promotion of Human Rights in Western Sahara urges the international community to immediately address the situation of the Sahrawi people who have been waiting since 1966 for the organization of a referendum of self-determination and call for effective protection of human rights defenders, journalists, and political prisoners. The Geneva Group calls upon the Security Council to include a human rights component in the MINURSO mandate and take the necessary steps to organize the referendum in Western Sahara. Calls upon the Human Rights Council to create a mandate of special rapporteur on the situation in the occupied territory of Western Sahara, and calls upon the International Committee of the Red Cross to visit the Sahrawi political prisoners. And with this, we open the floor to questions here in the room or on the internet, either to us or to the people in the occupied Western Sahara. I see someone here in the room. You can speak any language.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone here and also in Africa. My question has to do with the rupture of relations between Morocco and Algeria, which I think took place within the last couple of weeks. I'm wondering if what the question is open. I don't have it directed at anyone in particular, but if there's any analysis as to if there could be any repercussions for of that on the situation in Western Sahara, the rupture of relations between Algeria and Morocco.
Well, this is not really the subject of the press conference. Everybody knows that the relationship between the two countries is difficult. Of course, one of the subjects that make this relationship difficult is the situation in Western Sahara. We all know that Algeria has been, since its own independence, having for all the independence movement in the world, including Western Sahara. But I mean, this has not really to do with the long-standing violations and systematic violations of human rights, international humanitarian law by the Kingdom of Morocco in the occupied Western Sahara. Nicole, please, we are listening to you. You can speak any language, French.
Français, oui, meilleur que l'anglais pour moi. Je voulais intervenir en vraiment rendant un salut et un hommage à Sultana Raya, qui est pour moi vraiment le symbole de la lutte du peuple sahraoui actuellement au territoire occupé. Elle est depuis le 19 novembre, si je ne me trompe pas, 19 novembre 2020, enfermée dans sa maison. Elle est assignée à résidence dans sa maison, ça fait plus de 300 jours. Et ça correspond exactement à la période où la guerre a de nouveau été, d'abord le cessez-le-feu a été rompu par les Marocains à Guerrirat, et ensuite, le 13 novembre, la guerre a été redéclarée par le Front Polisario comme légitime défense face à cette violation. Donc, l'histoire de Sultana et de sa sœur Louara correspond exactement, suit exactement ce qui se passe actuellement entre le Front Polisario et le Maroc occupant. Nous avons vu, même ici, nous avons vu comment ils essayent de saboter tout ce qui concerne la lutte des défenseurs des droits de l'homme, des activistes, des journalistes, etc. Ce que je voudrais souligner aussi chez Sultana, c'est son courage. Personne ne sera surpris par ce mot, mais il est absolument remarquable parce qu'il va jusqu'à oser redire ce que les Marocains font. Et comme vous le savez, ils ont été jusqu'à la violer, jusqu'à agresser ses organes génitaux, etc. Ce qui est normalement, dans le monde musulman, plutôt un objet de honte. Mais elle n'a pas honte, parce qu'elle sait que c'est ça qu'on veut qu'elle ait. On veut qu'elle ait honte. Et elle veut dire ce qu'on lui fait, parce que c'est épouvantable, et c'est des représailles, tout le temps des représailles, tout le temps. Et donc, c'est vraiment un combat remarquable, vraiment remarquable. Et je pense que nous allons tous suivre désormais ce qui va se passer au niveau du Parlement européen, puisqu'il a été annoncé il y a 2 jours que la gauche européenne avait proposé la candidature de Sultana pour le prix Sakharov. Le prix Sakharov, qui est un prix pour les personnes ou les organisations qui défendent les droits de l'homme en Parlement. Et donc, dès le 27 septembre, c'est-à-dire, je pense, lundi prochain, si je ne m'abuse, les candidatures vont être examinées au Parlement européen et des votes vont être faits ensuite, parce que bien sûr il y a plusieurs candidatures, il n'y a pas que celle de Sultana, mais celle de Sultana, vraiment, en tant que femme sahraoui défendant les droits du peuple sahraoui, et c'est pas ses droits à elle seule, bien sûr, c'est les droits de tout son peuple, le droit à l'autodétermination avant tout qu'elle défend. Eh bien, là, ça va être exposé au Parlement européen, et je pense qu'il nous faut suivre ça et diffuser un maximum pour que vraiment ça devienne un sujet important et dont on parle, y compris au sein de l'Union européenne, qui, comme vous le savez, a des accords avec le Maroc et qui doit prendre position par rapport à la question du Sahara. Voilà, c'est sur quoi je voulais insister.
Merci bien, Nicole. Just maybe for the people here in the room who doesn't understand French, she praised Sultana Raya's testimony. in particular about the sexual assault she had to face, because in the Muslim culture, to speak about these kind of issues is very, very sensitive. And she said that a group of parliamentarians, members of the European Parliament, proposed Sultana Khaya for the Sakharov Prize. And this will be decided next week by the member of the European Parliament. So I don't know if there are other questions or comments. Please, sir. You can speak French or...
Yes, I want to thank the presenters for their testimonies and courage.
If you can introduce yourself. Please.
Yes, my name is Hans-Uli Gerber. I'm here with E4, International Fellowship for Reconciliation. And I'm Swiss. I'm wondering about the International Red Cross. They wait to get the authorization to visit prisoners. Is it or could it be part of their mandate to also visit people that are under house arrest? Because that might, I don't know whether it will make a difference, but I'm wondering whether that's considered and happening.
Yes, of course. I mean, the International Committee of the Red Cross played an essential role when there was this ceasefire agreement in the late 80s. And at the moment of the implementation of the UN mission for the referendum in Western Sahara, and the ICRC played a vital role for the exchange of prisoners, dozens of prisoners, Moroccan soldiers in the hands of the Polisario Front, and Polisario Front combatants who were in the hands of the Moroccan authorities. But then, with this ceasefire and the process of the implementation of the settlement plan and the organization of the referendum was postponed, and then we know that there was, at the beginning of the century, the Baker Plan, then Baker II, and then always the Moroccan authorities find a good reason to postpone the organization of the referendum, and because of the ceasefire, no conflict going on, the ICRC pulled back. But as I said before, in 2015, they agree with the Moroccan authorities to reopen a delegation in Rabat. And since then, they are trying to visit these people. And now, because of the resuming of the conflict, of course, its role is even more important. But as I said, unfortunately, they don't succeed in implementing what normally they do in other countries where there is a conflict.
Can I just add, please? I find the question very, very interesting. I think the situation shifted due to the fact that you have an end of the ceasefire, a resumption of armed struggle in the occupied territories and along the berm. But I find it interesting that you ask whether or not it will be a difference due to the fact that Sultana and Luara are held under house arrest and not in a Moroccan prison. You know, for the rest of the Sahraoui political prisoners, they are held in Moroccan jails within Morocco proper. So they have been transported from the occupied territories and up to the occupying country, which gives grounds for ICRC to visit. But Sultana and Luara, they're held under house arrest in Bushtour, so in the occupied territory. But I believe that, you know, a house arrest is still detention. They're held under close premises, so their home classifies as the prison. So the assessment of whether ICRC can visit or not is whether or not they're in a prison, and a house arrest qualifies as a detention. Thank you.
I don't know if there are any more questions or comments on the internet. Tobias? René?
Hello?
Il faut lever la main. faut lever la main. Majoub.
I don't know what.
Majoub Maleha is wanting to speak.
Mais il ne sait pas comment lever la main. Il faut l'aider.
Majoub, want to say something?
Yeah.
Réaction, dans les réactions.
Gianfranco, if you don't mind.
Majoub, you want to add something?
Yes, yeah,
Please.
just in relation with the ICRC presence or not in Western Sahara. As Odessa, we have done an appeal last year, early this year, urging the ICRC to have a permanent mission, especially after resumption of hostilities in Western Sahara. So from our point of view, we see the ICRC providing different support in countries that have no war or no occupation even. And one of those assistance they provide is medical assistance. For us, they should be there. We have people that get injured or attacked by the Moroccan occupying forces, and they're afraid of going to the hospitals and get necessary medical treatment because they will be arrested or mistreated. So for this kind of assistance, we think and we believe that the ICRC have to be present in Western Sahara as a separate country, not to operate from Morocco, considering the legal status of Western Sahara as a separate and distinct territory, and consider it as an occupied territory. They should have a mission there and base their information on that report. We still hope that this can go through, but it seems quite difficult on political level. That was my thing to add. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. I mean, in a situation like this one in Western Sahara, the role of ICRC is fundamental. But like everywhere in the world, ICRC can do just what the power exercing, the states exercing the power in the territory allow them to do. But that's why when we speak about effective protection of political prisoners, this is just to remember everyone and every state that Article 1 of common to all the Geneva Convention states that every contracting party has to implement and to make sure that everybody implements the conventions. And that's why when the Security Council, in adopting the resolution renewing the mandate of MINURSO, calls on the parties to cooperate with the International Committee of the Red Cross, in fact, it's up to the members, in particular of the Security Council, to speak clearly to the occupying power that they have to work firmly with the International Committee of the Red Cross. I don't know if there are any other questions or comments. If this not is the case, I will thank again the Swiss Club, Press Club, for hosting our press conference, and thanks, of course, all the testimonies and Tone for her contribution. Thank you very much to everyone.